Yeah, our technology is not our friend today.
I would like to ask the acting clerk to provide a report concerning matters that were discussed in the closed session.
Yes, thank you. Just for the public's benefit, we opened the open meeting at 9 o'clock this morning and moved to a closed session. In attendance, we have all members of council. We have Deputy Mayor Shane here in the council chambers, and all the other members of council are attending remotely as allowed by the Municipal Act. In the closed session, we had one item on the agenda, and the CAO provided a report to council regarding COVID-19 and municipal employee impacts, and that was all that was discussed there.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I would like to ask Mr. Nesbitt now to present the reports that we see in front of us.
Thank you, and through the chair. I just wanted to open up a discussion in regards to municipal emergency declarations with council. I do apologize for the verbal report and not submitting a written report, but we are doing our best to respond to an ever-evolving situation around the COVID-19 virus. So just to provide council with some information, municipal staff and our emergency control group have been monitoring, responding to the COVID-19 situation for several weeks now, and we continue to do so. The emergency control group meetings have been scheduled twice weekly, with other senior level management meetings scheduled on alternate days outside of the twice weekly control group meetings. Planning efforts with our community partner organizations are also ongoing. These organizations include the Northwest Health Unit, Dryden Regional Health Center, and the Kenora District Services Board, just to mention a few. Some of these efforts revolve around the Dryden Regional Healthcare or Health Center capacity surge planning that's taken place, as well as temporary self-isolation housing for our vulnerable population. Again, these activities are done in unison with our community partners to address some of the needs within the community. Part of the emergency control group's role is to assess the need to declare a municipal state of emergency. Normally, the guidelines used by the emergency control group center around the ability of municipal operations to deal with a situation at hand. To date, our municipal continuity of operations planning and assessments show us that the municipality is able to continue essential services, and the need to declare a municipal emergency is not required at this time. And again, I repeat that this is from a standpoint of municipal operations. Outside of this, we have requests from other community partners, primarily our hospital, asking council to consider the declaration of emergency for two primary reasons. The first reason is messaging to our citizens, messaging that states the importance of following all recommendations and orders that slow or prevent the spread of the COVID-19 virus. And the second reason is messaging to our upper levels of government regarding the potential healthcare needs in our community. And just to speak a little bit about some of those potential healthcare needs, hospital staff have again done their capacity surge planning and have used some available modeling to show where peak demand for community residents or potential healthcare patients could hit the numbers in and around 200. 70 of those patients may require a ventilator. With current capacity, number of beds at our local hospital at around 41 beds, and nowhere close to the number of ventilators needed, it really does show the potential for a healthcare emergency in our community and surrounding area. So just a few other points around the emergency declaration from a municipal standpoint. So a municipal declaration does not give the municipality any extraordinary authority, as you've seen with the province. And this is under the Emergency Management and Protection Act. The province truly does have some extraordinary powers under that act. It's not the same for the municipality. The municipality really, their avenue to create municipal bylaws is through the Municipal Act. And of course, when we're creating our bylaws within this community, we have to follow all other legislation that plays into that, including the Charter of Rights. So we really don't have some of those extraordinary powers that you see exercised recently with the province. Having said that, there have been over 150 Ontario municipalities that have declared a state of emergency, and I think at this point close to 40 First Nation communities within Ontario. So it is an ongoing, I think, discussion with all municipalities at this point, and those numbers reflect, you know, those discussions. And again, there have been some questions around additional available funding if the municipality should declare. At this point in time, we are not aware of any additional funding directly for the municipality in the event that we do declare a state of emergency. So again, I wanted to open this discussion up for council. Normally we would probably make this decision to declare a state of emergency within the emergency control group. The head of council is part of that group. But given the extraordinary circumstances that we're into, I felt that it did warrant a discussion at council. So I'd open it up to questions or comments through the chair.
Questions? Comments?
I have.
Councillor McKinnon.
I believe that since we have a stated need in our community to support this, that we should declare this state of emergency. It's up to us as a council to show some leadership and take this forward. The need is in our community. We should be registering with the government now so that they're aware that we've declared this state, and we have to support the other organizations that are functioning hard in our community to try and keep up and prepare us for what might happen. That includes Northwest Health Unit, that includes the Kenora District Services Board, that includes Dryden Regional Hospital, that includes all the childcare, social networking that's going on. We need to show that we are there to support them. Just my opinion.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Am I on? Can you hear
Councillor
me?
Price, yes, go ahead.
I also agree with it. I think that by claiming state of emergency, it maybe will make more people understand the seriousness of what's happening. There's still, I believe, a lot of people in this community who are not taking this serious. And by stating state of emergency, maybe they will get a better understanding that this is actually quite serious. So I agree with Councillor McKinnon and with our CAO.
Thank you. Councillor McKay.
Yeah, I agree too with Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Price in that if the hospital is asking us to do this as a show of support, they're the ones that are going to be on the front lines of this and dealing with not just the potential of the virus, but of the normal activity that's at the emergency and everything else that's coming on them. And they're just normal people working in there that are worried about their health. So I think it's my understanding that you know, it's not necessarily beneficial in other aspects, but I think we need to support our hospital. So I'm for it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Carlucci.
Through the chair, I guess I'm not so much for it at this point in time. I think having a message out there that you must follow those rules, you must, you know, and there's rules in place that if you don't follow them, you can be fined. And I think we have started finding people to so they understand the seriousness of the situation. And declaring the emergency, in my mind, isn't going to help that. I mean, I get how the hospital feels, and I get that. But I really don't think that people who aren't following the rules, they're not going to follow them anyway. They just don't seem to get the seriousness of this. So I think you get them by where it hurts them most in their pocketbook. I mean, at the end of the day, if you get fined for not following, maybe other people are going to start towing the line. So get up the messaging. We're doing really good things through the control group of putting things in place, like all the plans are in place for if it hits Dryden or when it hits Dryden, we're ready. And I think that's the messaging we should put out versus trying to declare it at this point. It may come down the road, but at this point, I feel that we stay status quo. That's just my take on this.
Councillor Bush, I believe, was next.
Yes, through the chair, thank you. On one hand, I kind of feel like Councillor Carlucci, and it's a bit like crying wolf when we have no COVID-19 cases. But on the other hand, we're acting as a community like we already are in a crisis and we already are in a lockdown. And so I guess at the end of the day, I don't see any harm in declaring an emergency. But having said that, I think we need to consider doing some different things because we have declared an emergency, if that's where we end up going. So for example, what it says in declaring an emergency, there's 3 basic reasons, and I think we've all read those in the documents that we've been sent. One is around the optics of demonstrating to the public that the issue is being taken seriously and we're taking every step that we can to protect the public. And so again, what are those actions? Volunteers, if we do employ them by the city, it does provide them with WSIB protection. I don't think that's relevant for us. But I think the third one is important if we go this route. The third one says, provide the head of council the authority to take actions or make orders not contrary to the law to protect the inhabitants in the area of the emergency. So what does that mean? There's a bunch of words, but I think we need to think about that in terms of, are there some examples of what the head of council, what actions and orders that might be taken in this emergency? Are there things such as curfews or business hours or crowd size or other things? It would be good to know what actions and orders those might look like. Because in the absence of knowing what that might look like, it's just a bunch of hollow words. So if we're going to take this emergency seriously, and I think Councillor Carlucci alluded to that, we still have people doing their own thing and not paying any attention. What are some of the things, if we go down this path, that we as council and the head of council, what actions might we take to deal with this emergency, even in the absence of having any COVID-19 cases? Otherwise, it seems like kind of a toothless exercise that's just there for support. So I would support doing it, but I think we need to actually think about what other things that we might put in place to actually put some substance behind it.
Thank you.
That's my comment.
Other comments? Mayor Wilson.
Thank you. Just, looking at the pros and the cons, I don't think I have much else to add. I think that on the pro side, showing support for the healthcare workers, making political leadership, emotional statement of support, and showing that we take this seriously, those are all good reasons too. But being a practical kind of guy, I think I don't want to cry wolf because, I've seen people, there's a number of municipalities. One article I read earlier said that there were something like 490 municipalities, and there aren't that many in Ontario, that declared a climate change emergency back a year ago. It makes a political statement, but practically speaking, what does it accomplish? So I would hate to see Dryden get used to the idea of us calling emergencies for political statements. I think declarations of emergencies are for real emergencies, and there are any number of potential catastrophes that our community could be open to. For example, we don't have enough necessarily fire suppression support if we were to have a wildfire in the summer, even though we have the MNR Air Base right here. So there's a number of things where we're potentially exposed to for risk. But if we by not declaring an emergency feel that we have too much political heat on us and we're not acting, especially when it comes from the healthcare sector, then it doesn't bode well for the city in terms of the PR aspect of it. I just like to see things that we do make a difference to the community rather than having a symbolic action. But if council decides as a majority that this would be a good idea to support, to me it's not going to make much practical difference anyways, so why oppose it?
Thank you. Any further comments? For myself, I participated in the emergency control group meetings for the last 2 weeks, I believe. And yesterday had the interagency aspect to it, where we had Northwest Health Unit, Dryden Regional Hospital, the OPP, EMS, and I think that's it for outside agencies. But there was some discussion on declaration of an emergency, and it really it was in regards to us as a council and a city taking it seriously. I think we do take it seriously, but as you're all aware, and you might be subject to this, people are terrified of what's going on. Businesses are shuttered. Our way of life really has been upended. I don't think there's a better example of an emergency, and we're just holding our breath, collective breath, waiting for cases to start manifesting themselves in our medical system. So, and it's going to happen. By all accounts, it's going to happen. It's not something that's going to bypass us. But I think of Ms. Armstrong-Ross, president of the Dryden Regional Health Center. She said, declaring an emergency, there's no downside to it. So, I don't think we're acting like lemmings here following every other municipality. I think there's a real reason for this, and that we should do it. And it shows the whole community that we're serious about this, and that we are in the middle of an emergency here. So that's my opinion. Mr. Nesbitt.
Just through the chair, just a couple of comments. One is there isn't much of a downside, from a municipal standpoint to declaring an emergency. It increases, I think, the rigidness of our emergency control group meetings and following our plans that are in place. But that's fairly minor in the grand scheme of things. But I want to say, aside from the emergency declaration, how much I think we all appreciate our frontline workers that are out there. Healthcare for sure comes to mind, but we have frontline workers that are continuing to provide services from a standpoint of groceries and medication, and we have frontline workers that are continuing to make deliveries to those retailers and such. So I think we all have to be very appreciative of those frontline workers that are out there continuing to do their jobs and helping to protect the entire community. So thank you.
So I don't know, Madam Clerk, if we need sorry, Mayor Wilson.
Yeah, I guess the question for us is we all want to show leadership, and the question is, will this promote calm or will it promote panic? Will it promote security or will it promote a kind of alarmist response? So I don't pretend to have the answer to that. There's benefits of declaring, there's benefits of not declaring.
Through the chair, I'm sort of on the same boat as Mayor Wilson. I was thinking about this, that I worry that if we do declare it, that it could cause more anxiety in people. And I mean, there was panic with, people hoarding stuff just for the sake of just doing it. But if you declare an emergency, will that make things worse? And I do worry about our vulnerable sector, who a lot of seniors who they can't get out. I don't want them panicking that this is, it is a serious case, and I totally agree with that. And I worry about all those involved that have to work on our behalf. I'm just worried about causing more anxiety, and that kind of sits in the back of my mind. Thanks.
Councillor McKay.
The anxiety's already there. It's huge. I've got staff at the Holiday Inn that are having to work, and they're very, very concerned. The anxiety's out there big time. By declaring this, it's not going to add any more anxiety around than there already is. So I think it's the right thing to do.
I'm sorry, just for clarity, that was, Councillor McKay, just for clarity, the right thing to do is what?
Is to declare the state of emergency.
Thank you. Councillor Bush.
Yeah, I think if we declare a state of emergency through the chair, thank you. I think it's very important what our messaging would be coming out of any such declaration.
Absolutely.
And what it means to the town. And as I noted earlier, we're already acting in a lockdown situation and responding to this crisis as if it were present in our community today. So we already are acting that way. And so I think our messaging needs to really clearly articulate why we're declaring an emergency, who it's going to help, and who our partners are, and how this all ties together. And do it in such a fashion that we minimize raising anxiety levels. And I think we can do that with some good creative messaging coming out if this is the route that we go.
Thank you. Mr. Nesbitt, that's not an issue. The communications will be refined to reflect that. If
Through
we
the
pass
chair,
this, yes.
yes, we can, head of council and staff normally work on those communications as part of the emergency control group activities. So I would assume that we would continue down that path with the head of council at the emergency control group table, yeah. Unless otherwise directed by council.
So Mayor Wilson, I guess the question is, are you, I don't know if we need a resolution for this. I think it's just a declaration by the head of council.
Yes, and I like to take maybe not direction, but strong input from what administration, what the emergency group has to say on it, what their recommendation is. And it seems like we're kind of split on this, but it's a real tough one. I think it's a bit early, practically speaking. I think if things escalated, I think that would be a time to call an emergency. This is more of a marathon that we're into. It's not a sprint. I can see this going on for months. So I would want to save some powder, keep our powder dry for now. That's my personal opinion, but I do have concern for what it may look like to the health community, to the hospital, to the health unit, if they think that by us not declaring an emergency, for some reason we don't support their efforts, because I know that all of us do. We all do, and we take it very seriously. So it's this is a real tough one for me, because there's merit to declaring, but to me it just lacks so much teeth, and it doesn't really give practical benefit to what we're doing right now. As a number of you have said, we're doing everything we can right now and collectively. And I'm really glad to see that the emergency control group is including not just the usual participants, but it's reached out to other stakeholders in the community. So that's a real positive.
Would we be served by having a resolution to guide your thoughts or guide your actions? Sorry.
How do you mean?
Well, if we're going, we can formulate a resolution to declare a state of emergency in Dryden, or not, and vote on it.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Like I'm hearing split opinions. There's three that would like, I think strongly would like to have a declaration, and three that probably either on the fence or more towards not declaring it. So that's why I'm wondering if we should, is this the time? I'm asking council, is this the time to do it? If you feel that it is the time to do it, then let's go ahead. But if you think we should perhaps wait a bit, which I do, then let's keep this on the back burner, but in the forefront of our minds. We can always call an emergency meeting a week from now, for example. We haven't got a case yet. I think it will come, but I think that might be an appropriate time to declare an emergency if we were to do so. That's just my personal opinion.
Councillor Bush.
Yeah, I've been back and forth through the chair. I've been back and forth on this issue in my own mind over the last number of days, and I guess what's persuaded me probably to support an emergency at this point in time versus waiting. And I vacillated, and I made my comments initially about not wanting to cry wolf too early, and what really comes out of it. But when I look back at the COVID-19 response in some of the American cities, particularly New York, hard hit right now, it really came down to a behavioral issue. And it wasn't more than 3 or 4 weeks ahead of the current out-of-control situation that New York seems to be in now, that the mayor of New York was encouraging people to go out and continue to go to restaurants and live life as normal and blah, blah, blah. And so what happened was people's behaviors didn't change. And now they've declared an emergency, but weeks and maybe a month too late. So I think there is some benefit in my own mind now. There's benefit in declaring it now, if for no other reason than to start getting people to reflect more seriously on their behaviors going forward. Crowd sizes, social distancing, self-isolation, all of those things that some people in our community to this day are not taking seriously. And so I think this raises the ante. And for me, I would rather be on the side of being more cautious in this situation than less cautious and then trying to catch up. Once we get cases in our town, it's too late. And if we got a case into our town because people were not taking it seriously enough and their behaviors put the community at risk, if declaring an emergency can even influence 1 or 2 people to correct their behaviors and to be more cautious, I think we've gained something. So I've come from the point of view of I'm concerned about crying wolf and saying things and then nothing changes or nothing happens to maybe we can use this, and I think we could use this to our advantage to continue to help people change their behaviors. That's my perspective on it. I don't want to become a New York, and as much as we can do proactively in this situation, I think the better. And we're a better place to start than with no cases. That's my view.
Thank you, Councillor Bush. I couldn't agree more. Anyone else? So, some direction, Mr. Nesbitt. Did you want me to ask for?
Can I just intercede there for a second?
Go ahead, Councillor McKinnon.
I believe that I agree with what Norm just said. We have to be proactive, and we can't sit back and say this isn't going to happen, because it is going to happen. And part of our messaging, whatever that comes to, if we come to an agreement of doing this emergency declaration, is part of our message has to be to include a thank you to all those people in our community that are stepping up. And I realize they're doing their job, but they're doing their job in peril. And, you know, I'm talking about health workers, and I'm talking about folks that work in the stores. We got to make sure we recognize that they're going above and beyond by even turning up for work. So that's just my opinion, but our messaging has to be very clear that we're taking a leadership role here. We see this as something that we can't resist. It's out there. We have to deal with it. And we have a lot of elements out in our community that have actually said to me, well, where's the town? You're dead silent. Where's the city? You're dead silent. Well, this is our opportunity to get out there and say that we support the organizations in our community. And this is our opportunity to thank those people that are stepping up every day and doing their job. And it's our opportunity to tell people, follow the rules, follow what our healthcare providers are telling us. And that maybe we can help this problem go away. Just my opinion, guys.
Thank you. Mayor Wilson.
Thank you. So if we declare a state of emergency, then if Roger, if through admin and through roll on the CMC, if we can get a statement, the right kind of statement together, a draft, and just run it by council to make sure that it, you know, as per Councillor Martin McKinnon, what he said there, to make sure it reflects the message that we all want to make sure it says, then is everyone fine with that? I'm thinking of Councillor Carlucci.
Councillor Carlucci.
Through the chair, yeah, I mean, I'll go with the majority of council. I'm okay with that, but I still think if you don't follow the rules, you need to implement the fines. That's the only way people are going to start listening. I've seen it. I've seen, you know, 4 and 5 people together. I see them. They don't care. They still go to the store and hoard stuff. The messaging's been out there for how long, and they're still not listening. So in order to give us some teeth, it has to have something that is going to hurt them if they don't follow the rules. Majority of the people are, but it's those ones that aren't. That's what's bothering me, I guess. And those are the ones that are going to cause problems for us down the road. And, you know, protect all these workers and everything else going on. If these people that aren't listening don't get, I hate to use the word punished, but I have to do something in order to make them understand the seriousness of this situation. So I will agree with the majority of council. I'll support them. Right? I just really think there's got to be teeth in that declaration. That's all. My thought.
Thank you. I just, as Councillor Carlucci and I were parties to the meeting yesterday, we discovered, I think, Councillor Carlucci, I don't want to speak for you, but I discovered that the legislation out there to enforce some of the things that have been brought up or enacted, the method of enforcing it is still kind of foggy at this point. I don't believe there's been a lot of enforcement on people for self-quarantining or some of the, and really some of the necessary legislation to do that doesn't appear to be in place. That's nothing that we can do anything about, but I'm hopeful that when and if that happens, that it's enforced rigorously, and I think that's all we can hope for. So I agree with you, Councillor Carlucci, but I didn't hear yesterday in our meeting anything really, that there was any real big effort. Well, maybe effort's the wrong word. There was not a lot of call for the enforcement at this point, but I think it will happen in the future, so we have to be prepared for that, and I appreciate your comments. Anyone else? So we're looking for a direction. Sorry, someone else? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Nesbitt.
No, just through the chair. The direction I understand will be that through myself, working with the emergency control group, we'll get some messaging established. We will run it through council and move forward in that manner.
Correct?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. Will we move on?
Chairman,
Yes, Councillor Bush.
we didn't have a break between closed and open, and I'm wondering if we could take a 2-minute break, if that would be possible.
Absolutely. To the next issue.
Absolutely, and through the chair, in addition to the discussion around emergency declaration in response to the COVID-19 situation, there's also been recent discussion, both from some councillors and as well as some citizens, in regards to possible municipal fee and charges relief. I'll call it relief. And more specifically, questions around whether or not the municipality could reduce or eliminate for the period through the COVID-19 response fees and charges around water, wastewater, solid waste disposal or garbage, as well as our MyLift or transit fares. So again, I wanted to put this in front of council for a discussion as to whether or not council may want to consider some of the fees and charges relief that I've mentioned. So at this point, I will, I guess, open it up through the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Nesbitt. Questions and comments? Councillor Bush.
This is, I do have a few comments on this, and first of all, I know that everybody on this call and most people in the community, we all want to help in the current situation. Having said that, if I look at what the province is doing and what the federal government is doing, the province put together and announced the $17 billion package to assist people that are most affected by the COVID-19 situation. One of those, I guess, highlight items is the hydro relief cost. They're also giving $2 billion to hospitals, and they have another number of things within that $17 billion relief package. On the federal government side, they put in this CERB, Canadian Emergency and Response Benefit Program, which I think, as we all know, provides up to $2,000 a month for up to 4 straight months currently for people affected by COVID-19. And that covers people who have lost their job, that are sick, that are quarantined, taking care of somebody with COVID-19, working parents who must stay home without pay to take care of their kids, or home because of school or daycare closures. So that's one current program that's just been put in place by the federal government, $2,000 a month. Secondly is their employment insurance program. And these are very targeted benefits. These are benefits that are targeted to affected people. And when I look at some of the things that we've just discussed, whether it's water rates, wastewater treatment, garbage, MyLift, etc., I'm not sure what that does for us. I have to say, both of the federal and provincial programs, for example, they're able to pay for those by increasing provincial and federal deficits and by borrowing money. And we don't have the ability as a municipality to borrow money to pay for these things. We don't have that ability. So we could increase our deficit, but that would mean So the question in my mind is, how would we pay for the any changes like that have been proposed currently? We'd have to do it by things like reducing our capital spending, or drawing down our reserves, or cutting back services. The option of raising taxes, to me, doesn't make, to pay for these things, either currently or in the future, doesn't make any sense, because really all you're doing then is taking out of one hand and giving it to the other hand. The other thing that concerns me a bit about these things, if they're just done in a blanket way, you know, with water, if we reduce water and sewer or wastewater charges or garbage charges in the short term, we're not really targeting those things that necessarily at people that actually need the benefit. And quite frankly, in our community, there are some that need our benefit, whether they're businesses or individuals, and there are some that do not. You know, anyone who's currently fully working or who's on pension and their income doesn't change, they don't need any relief today versus what they were able to fund before. But there are businesses that do, and there are individuals that might. So if we were to do anything, in my mind, those things should be targeted to a specific group of people or businesses with a demonstrated need, not just a blanket thing to cover people that don't have a need for it. Otherwise, I'm not sure what we're doing. In the case of the city, we're really just giving people their own money back. And as we do that, we're weakening our municipality financially going forward. So my thoughts are, it might be best at the moment to put more thought into what ways the city can help its residents and ourselves as we navigate through this COVID-19 crisis, and additionally put some thought into how we might be strong coming out of this crisis. As I think about what's happening at the federal and provincial level, I think our municipality is likely to have to stand even more on its own 2 feet coming out of this crisis than we do even today. And I think we should think about working on those things and keeping our powder dry right now. And revisit this if we need to somewhere down the road. Maybe that's in a month or 2 months or 3 months. But how we provide direct support for people in our community who would need it if that's the route we choose to go, and be better prepared to deal with the future need. Really, when you think about it, the province and the federal governments are much better equipped than we are to provide assistance, financial assistance, with their ability to borrow and their ability to print money. And they've targeted those things at people and businesses in need. So, again, as much as I think that we all want to help people, and we do, and we've spent a good hour talking about ways to do that already, I think it's premature for the city to start looking at untargeted, broad-based initiatives that are going to cost us in the end and weaken ourselves financially, particularly given what we're likely to do going forward. So maybe it's a good time to start the discussion, but I really do believe it's very premature to actually enact something right now. I think we need to put a lot more thought into it and consider the implications of doing these things, because we're really using our own money to pay ourselves. And we're not in a good shape financially right now. We're getting better, but I think another month or 2 or 3 will give us a lot more visibility on what the real issues are and who the real people and businesses that might need some additional support are versus where we are today. That's my view.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Price.
I do agree with what Norm is saying. Those comments came from, or questions came from community members about the water and sewer rates and how they're going to increase because kids are home and more are being used. And Council Bush makes a really good point about there's people that still, they're working and they're other than being, going from home to work type thing, they're still able to afford all of the utilities and services available. Thinking now, I would say that, like Councilor Bush is saying, is to give it a couple of months and see who is, we're going to be able to tell just from failure to pay if those are the people that will need help, and to take into consideration maybe at that time, ways of helping them, like maybe with penalties or waiving certain fees. For those in need, for sure. Like I understand, there's different groups of people, some that are more fortunate and won't be affected by this, financially, but there certainly will be others who will be affected by it. So maybe we should table to look at it in a couple of months and keep an eye on people unable to pay maybe their property taxes or their utilities or anything else, garbage fees, that we take into consideration that group of people within a couple of months and see how everyone is doing. That's my main concern, is there are going to be people out there that are less fortunate and who are laid off and not or having to make decisions on what they can afford to pay for. Making sure that, like I think we discussed in the last meeting, that, about cutting off utilities or the penalties, that those things won't happen in this time, during this time. And like I said, to consider maybe in a couple of months when we're going to be able to see who was more affected by the COVID-19 financially than what we will right now. So I'm willing to not consider it right now, but in a couple of months, I'm sure that once everyone is back to whatever we will call normal, to look at the books at that point and help the people that need help. Just my opinion.
Mr. Nesbitt. Thank you.
Through the Chair, just a quick comment. As I'm sure all the councillors are aware, we have taken steps to waive late fees and finance charges on property taxes and water, wastewater billing through to the end of April. That decision was primarily taken because we have closed our City Hall finance front counter to all public traffic, so that does impact some people's ability to pay. But at the same time, that does offer some relief to impacted residents by this situation. I just wanted to make that note.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
And another consideration that we need to take a look at is, like myself as a business owner and considered non-essential, now my business is completely closed down with no revenue coming in whatsoever. There are going to be businesses that can't afford to pay their taxes because they work on a month. There are businesses that work from month to month, and if this continues on for 1 to 2 months and we don't know when we're going to be open up again, how do you expect businesses to pay for services when there's no income coming into them whatsoever? Because like I can name a dozen that are self-employed and literally have no income coming in. So how do you expect them to pay for their utilities and property taxes?
Thank you.
It's a big concern.
I'm sorry, Mr. Nesbitt again.
Again, through the Chair, just to comment on that. I think it's maybe a couple different comments on that. One is, I think many of the businesses that have been impacted by the order by the province for non-essential workplaces to be shut down, Some of them may be property owners, but some of them may also be tenants. And I would hope that the property owners recognize the impact that this has to their tenants and act accordingly. From a municipal standpoint, on a case-by-case basis, we have and would be willing to continue working with individuals that are struggling to pay property taxes or other bills, municipal bills, with payment plans and things of that nature. We have done that in the past, and we would continue to with that practice.
Thank you. Other comments?
Roger, would you be able to put something out to the businesses on that, just to, I see it come across several times, that fear, like, of the business owners, like for myself, I'm fortunate enough that I'm prepared, and I don't think, really it's going to affect my business, but it's not going to affect it to the point where I'm, may have to close my doors in the end. But to let the business owners, because like my business is different. So I have 4 apartments above me, but I also have commercial businesses where they're coming back and saying, hey, I'm closed down now, and can you relieve me of my rent? But the problem is that it's not just a mortgage or there's other things that rent pays for outside of like property taxes and the utilities and a mortgage and upkeep of a building. So just to give them some insight that things will get better, and we're going to work with them, because a lot of businesses don't know that yet, or business owners, like, the city is willing to work with them on getting through this thing together. That would be great.
Thank you. Councillor Martin McKinnon, I'm relying on you just to speak out, because we don't have you on screen if you choose to speak, just for your information. Mayor Wilson.
Okay. Thank you. Echoing what Councillor Price is saying, everyone is going to be impacted by what's happening. It's individuals, it's landlords, it's tenants, it's everybody who moves and has life in them. And what I see is, the question is do we implement breaks and benefits to citizens now, but later increase their taxes or cut their services, or some other such measure? The increased federal and provincial deficits that are upon them now, that have been announced, and I think there's more to come. Those are going to result in financial consequences to both citizens and government and businesses as well. And the municipality, it's going to be imperative that we maintain as strong a financial position as possible. Even the healthy businesses, that say have very little debt, or have been very financially careful over previous to this, the homeowners who have been very careful to watch and manage their money effectively, they are vulnerable as well. And like I said earlier, this is really a marathon. It's not a sprint. This is going to go on for weeks and months, and the ripple effects will be felt for years. So at the beginning, we have to be very careful about managing our resources, so that in the long run we can, as employers at the city and as businesses, we can have an opportunity for employees to come back to jobs. That's really, really important.
Thank you. Other comments?
It's Blake here. I have a comment.
Yes, Blake.
Okay, Just to let you know, we are monitoring with our organizations what is actually going on in the province with similar type questions. The question it came up actually 2 days ago, and there was lots of responses about what to do about water. And currently, it appears that no responses came back that any municipality is doing reductions in rates. But it is currently in conversations. They are following what we are doing, as well as no penalties for late payments, no water shutoffs at this time. And I will say one municipality did postpone their rate increase, and that was the only thing that had to do with increases. The thought in the industry is also actually revenue will drop as it is, because commercial businesses and industrial businesses are not using as much water currently. I did take a look at the month of March. The water coming out of the plant right now is 10% less. Whether it's a redistribution of where the water goes or not, that's another question, if it goes to residential, back to commercial. But we are noticing that right now. And as far as waste management fees and things like that, we haven't noticed a big issue with that yet, with other municipalities talking much about it, but there is some concern, and a little bit more of the concern is continuing to recycle as recycling plants are starting to shut down, and where to deliver the product, and you actually stop recycling, or do you and along with waste management, having people at your landfills congregating, and of course our gate attendants. And some landfills have actually shut down to residential garbage and things like that. So there hasn't been a big change in the industry. I think down east they may have allowed one extra bag of garbage or something in a few smaller municipalities, but that's all we're hearing right now from across the province. But it is quite often, we're getting emails every day on from other municipalities asking lots of questions on this and getting answers back. So everyone's pretty well in the same boat we are right now. Down east, they're a little bit further ahead, as we know they've had more cases. But everyone's just monitoring it and seeing how long, as some of you had said, how long this will last into the future here. And taking a look next time, just to let you know, water meters are being read Monday. I'll have more detail if people are using more water or not. The only thing is school break was also on, so that's a typical time when people may use more water. I looked at last year's statistics. It doesn't really show much extra water is used, but certain residents may use certain increases in water. But of course, schools as well aren't using water as well. So just something to think about moving forward, and I can keep you updated on what's going on within the industry and with other municipalities as well.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. Councillor Carlucci, did I see you in the queue?
Through the chair, I guess, yeah. When I looked at this in front of us here, I thought of, more of, here's some ideas that I'm thinking about, and then to get a costing done, right? It's hard to say if we reduce water, if we, buy lift, garbage bag tags, whatever it is, like, what's that actually going to cost the municipality? So listening to other councillors at this point, yeah, maybe it's too soon to be doing things and just wait it out. But I mean, I think Roger might, I don't know if he has ideas of what has to be done or what could be done. And if we do those, what the cost would be to the city to do that. So, I mean, my only real concern would be if people are getting garbage bag tags, for example. I mean, everything's shut down to get them. So how do you work around that? Maybe Blake can answer me on that one. I don't know. I don't want people out in the public, so just trying to think of their safety.
Just a comment
Mr. Nesbitt.
through the chair. Just to comment on Councillor Carlucci's comments and maybe build a little bit on our Public Works Manager's comments around wastewater revenues. Overall, there's pressures being put on our budgeted revenues already through the closures of the recreation complex, the library, and the museum. So we already know that there's a significant revenue loss there. We know that commercial use of water and wastewater will have pressure on those revenues due to the businesses that are now shut down. We will be working to put together some budget forecasting to help us understand what this all looks like. We really haven't had a chance to do that yet, but we know there are going to be impacts. I think the comments around, it being a little bit too early to move forward with some of these ideas, I think that's a fair thing to say. We really, some of the financial relief that the province and the federal government has moved forward with, long term, we really don't know how that's going to impact other funding programs that the province has in play for municipalities, things like OMPF, ISIF, and on the provincial federal level, the ISIP program. Things like that may be impacted through some of the additional relief packages that those senior levels of government are coming out with. So again, I think the statement of it being a little too early to look at some of these programs within the municipality or reductions of fees and charges, I think that's a fair path to take right now. More specifically, we have looked at providing some relief around solid waste or garbage, and that starts to get pretty complex to manage, especially if you think about trying to either target just our residents or even more specifically target those affected by the COVID-19 situation. It gets very complex, and I don't think I would recommend attempting that. We've talked a little bit about wastewater rates. It's a possibility, but again, it may be a little premature to start down that path. But we can certainly, again, work at shaping and giving council an idea what it might look like.
Mr. Nesbitt, do you have any comments on the MyLift situation and the potential for some help in that regard?
So specifically around MyLift or the transportation service that the city offers, we have restricted the service. As the public knows, we have some media releases out there, public notices. We restricted it down to more essential destinations. And with that, and I think together with all the messaging around, stay at home, don't make any trips that aren't necessary. We've seen a significant drop in ridership, but there has been a suggestion around, local organizations making a donation if we could reduce or waive ridership fares. And I think we're open to anything like that for sure. But ridership has dropped a lot, and that's a good thing considering the situation that we're in.
But as other transportation organizations in other communities, it is increasing because people have to go and get services and groceries and things like that. So it has waves and troughs of activity, I assume.
And again, we deem that service an essential service, an essential municipal service. We've seen other organizations due to again the virus situation, curtail or stop their transportation services completely. So it does, again for the people that need that service to get those essential items, groceries, medications, medical appointments, things of that nature. It's a very needed service in the community.
Thank you. Other questions? Mayor Wilson.
Thank you. I think that for me, it's kind of straightforward. We'll use the city as an example. We need to keep the revenues coming in so that we can afford to pay the employees so that they can keep the lights on and do their job. So you replicate that for every other organization, business, private, public, everywhere. It's vital. Otherwise we end up with what I would term economic constipation.
I haven't heard that before. Anyone else? Okay, just in closing then, I am glad we're having this conversation and that people are looking maybe down the road to some relief. I am encouraged also by Mr. Nesbitt, and I don't know how onerous this would be on the treasurer or the staff to come up with maybe some numbers that we could look at and have those just hold those numbers. If we have this conversation again, we can get exactly what we're talking about as far as if we flat rated water and sewer rates, for example, what would that cost us, or reducing it by certain percentages. What we're losing in late fees and penalties is also, I think, something of interest that we should know if we have this conversation in an emergency or a regular meeting again. So I appreciate that. And if there's no other comments, can we move on to the next item? Thank you. Councillor Bush.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, just as one addendum, I guess, to this conversation, and Roger, as you're going through your deliberations and looking at putting some budget forecasts together, I know it's early days and we can't forecast how long this is going to go on, but one of the questions down the road is at what point, if this crisis continues, will it start impacting our ability to spend our capital plan this year? And if we end up with some deficits due to revenue, et cetera, where would we propose to make up those deficits from, whether it's reserves or reduced capital spending or where it is? And so if you can just put some thought into that as part of that whole process, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Mr. Nesbitt.
Just through the chair, just to provide some additional comment on that. So again, everybody can appreciate that this is a daily evolving situation, sometimes hour by hour. But with that in mind, we have been looking at the potential impact of some of those larger capital projects that we do have scheduled, especially those construction projects where we only have a small window of opportunity from a standpoint of climate to do this work. And it's too early right now to say, but it really is going to be one of those wait and see situations. From a standpoint of mobilizing contract services from outside of the community and having them in the community in the given situation, it looks like it may be extremely difficult. But again, time will tell. But as we move forward, we're continually looking at that. Public Works is on it, and right now we're trying to proceed, as we normally would. We haven't indicated any areas that are tremendously affected from that standpoint. So we are trying to continue on as normal. But there will be a point in time, if the situation doesn't change, that we could be significantly impacted on that front.
And as I understand, most of those contracting issues would fall under essential services as well, as of today.
Yes, short answer.
So, okay, thank you. And anyone else? Hearing nothing, moving on to item C. Mr. Nesbitt.
Well, after just about 2 hours of COVID-19 related discussion, I'm happy to switch gears here. So just a quick staff report in regards to the recent announcement to the provincial gas tax funding program that we are recipients of on an annual basis. After multiple, I think, conversations with Ministry of Transportation ministers, a couple of different ministers over the last 2 years, along with some discussions with parliamentary assistants and such and ministry staff. We've seen a program change in the relation of the threshold of or the threshold amount that limits our ability to spend some of the gas tax, provincial gas tax funds on our operations, on our transit operations. So we got word that we would be receiving an additional just over or just shy of $55,000 in regards to that, and that we would be able to, spend that on our operations as opposed to being restricted to only capital expenditures around our transit program. So that's really good news for us. So the staff report is basically just looking for council acceptance of the agreement and to sign it and get it back to the ministry.
Thank you. Comments? Councillor Bush.
Yes, through the chair, thank you. Roger, just to be clear, those funds can now be used for operations and capital?
Correct, in regards to transit.
Yes. Okay, so that'll certainly help provide a little bit of relief to the municipality in the short term anyway.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other comments? Just for myself, our thanks to the province, and well done to all the staff and yourself and those who worked on delegations at various conferences and through correspondence. So well done. This helps us quite a bit. We have a motion, so I'll be asking the clerk to ask someone to move and second the motion.
Can I have someone first and second the motion, please?
I'll move it.
I'll move.
Thank you. Okay, moved by Councillor Carlucci, seconded by Councillor Price, that bylaw 4720-2020 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of an agreement between Her Majesty the Queen and Right of Ontario as represented by the Minister of Transportation for the Province of Ontario and the Corporation of the City of Dryden for the provision of funding under the dedicated gas tax funds for public transportation program be read a first, second, and third time.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Moving on, we have looking for a mover and a seconder for our confirmatory bylaw.
So moved.
I'll
Second?
second.
Is Councillor McKay on the sked yet?
Yeah, I'm here.
He hasn't moved anything, but we'll get to him.
Did I hear you say you seconded that, Councillor McKay?
No, Councillor Price.
Oh, I'm
Or
sorry.
Councillor Bush did,
Okay.
actually.
I was trying to get you on the minutes.
Oh, okay.
We'll let you get on the last one, Dave. Moved by Councillor Martin McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Bush, that bylaw 4721-2020 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council be read a first, second, and third time.
All in favor? Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
And lastly, we need a mover and a seconder to adjourn.
I'll move it.
There you go.
I'll second it.
Moved by Councillor McKay, seconded by Councillor Price, that this meeting do hereby adjourn.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Thanks, everyone. Stay safe.
See ya.
Stay safe.
Good meeting. Thank you, folks.